Hi, everybody. I'm sure you all know who we are, but just in case, we are DiscoCactus. You may have seen us on the stage 2 nights ago, and we are a video game music band. We'll get into all that. This panel is the making of our first album, Mania Mode, which we released earlier this year in May. Yep. We worked very hard on it, and we would appreciate it if you bought a copy.
I thought you were going to say, please clap.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, just to go into who we are, let's just go down the list. This is Doug here in the center.
Yeah, hi, I'm Doug. I play vibraphone in DiscoCactus, as well as occasionally other things like some additional vocals and percussion. On the album, I arranged Kine Salvation, Please No Steppy, which you heard last night at the concert, and Busted Dreams. Did I do anything else? I think that's it, right?
That's it.
You and me split up Persona, I think.
Oh yeah, we did.
Surprise,
we did collaborate on Persona a little bit. Yeah.
So
Okay.
Laura.
I'm Laura. I play iwi and flute and various types of winds and vocals. I arranged Rage Keeps You Alive, Chaos Queen, and Stupidopolis on the album. And I don't play any percussion.
She's also responsible for half of the Bloodborne arrangement from last
yes.
night. The other half of that responsibility, there it is.
We've got the noble demon with us in the flesh.
And okay, so next is Mateus. I'm Mateus. I'm not here today. Mateus could not be here with us today. Mateus is our violin player. He collaborated with Ben on Green Trail, our Hollow Knight arrangement. And Mateus plays, I say he plays violin, but he also plays electric violin, which is actually a different instrument. So I do have to include that. So Ben.
Hi, I'm Ben Wallace. I'm the keyboard player of the group. I don't really play anything. I have a percussion background, but I mostly just play keys. I arranged Victory Storm on the album, as well as the Fall Guys / Space Jam Slam Jam shenanigans that you saw a couple nights ago.
All right, Pete.
Hi, I'm Pete Bobinski. I play guitar in DiscoCactus, and I arranged Raid from the album, and you heard it the other night. I almost forgot that we played it.
And I'm Sam. I'm the bass player, and I arranged You're Lost, Link's Awakening, and the Journey one. I was bored for this, and then collabed with Doug on Persona 5. So, I don't know if any of you knew this, but we actually had been planning an album a little bit longer than you may have thought. We've probably since 2017, we have been saying we should do an album and then make a big planning document and don't touch it for a year. Then 2018 MAGFest rolled around. We should do an album. Let's look at the old planning document. It's outdated. Let's do another one. Doesn't happen.
Lather, rinse, repeat.
Yeah. But after a couple years, we realized that in order to really hunker down and make an album, we needed to raise some money in order to actually make it. So we decided on running a Kickstarter. We had toyed with the idea of Patreon and stuff like that, but Kickstarter seemed to be the platform we really needed to just get one big chunk, get the stuff paid for, pay our people, and we're good. So we picked out some repertoire, which was a combination of some old tunes that we played at live shows and a collection of, I'm going to skip around in the notes a little bit, but a collection of pieces that we workshopped at the Avaloq Farm Institute up in New Hampshire. It's a little artist retreat. It's the most beautiful place in the world. We got our own cabin. We just workshopped 4 arrangements for a weekend. And they were, what did we do? Green Trail, Chaos Queen, Busted Dreams. Was that it?
I think we worked on a couple other things too that actually didn't end up making on the album. Like Ben wrote a very memey Kirby arrangement. Green
That's
greens,
right.
Yeah.
It was evil.
Yeah, and actually I think that was, we were originally going to include that.
Yeah.
We came up with a short list of musicians that we wanted to work with, and we premiered those 3 arrangements at MAGFest 2020, and they went over well. So we were thinking like, okay, those are going to be on the album for sure. That's going to be like, that's where we're going to. I don't want to say base it on, but we had those like set. Like that's definitely it. And then we were going to begin production in summer of 2020, which we all know how that went, right? We delayed the album because we wanted to all work together in a recording studio. We didn't want to do the whole thing remotely. We did, and in the meantime, like in 2020, 2021, we recorded some singles remotely, like our Streets of Rage 4 arrangement, the original Fall Guys arrangement, and the Ring Fit Adventure video. We all did remotely.
We did a Zelda video for Zeldathon with another medley of tunes for that.
That's right. So we were able to do that, but for the actual album proper, we wanted to all be in the same room. We wanted to be in a studio. We needed that sound. We needed that communication and everything.
And at that time, there was so much uncertainty. It sort of puts things in perspective now. That, you know, we had no idea what could possibly go wrong because it was so early on in the pandemic that we just thought, it's not worth taking the risk. What if we set everything up and then just like,
Yeah, we were seriously talking about like maybe we can do this in September and we'll just all wear masks. And
I'm sure we'll be better by then, right?
By September of 2020.
Yeah. And we were just like, we can't. It would be horrible to take everyone's money from a Kickstarter than have it get, and delayed indefinitely. So we were like, I guess we should just wait.
Exactly.
See if things clear up.
Yep. So then after we, released our singles and everything, things were starting to look maybe a little bit safer. We were like, okay, now we can actually plan out what we're going to do here. So the first thing we did actually was switched up some of our original repertoire to better reflect our interests of that time, because like a year or 2 years had passed, and we had grown as musicians, and also we had played other games. Like Pete I think it was during the pandemic that you played Crosscode, right?
Yep, and tried to get everyone else into it as well.
Yeah, and then we all did get into it, and it's an amazing game.
I wasn't playing Gods Will Be Watching, but I was thinking about it a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it was also during the pandemic that Doug and I started playing Final Fantasy 14 and started to get involved with that community and fall in love with the music from that game too.
Yeah.
Like let me just say, like I've been to a lot of MAGFests, and I was down in the dealer area, and I was like walking around with Alex Hill from the Game Rest, and I was like, has there always been this much Final Fantasy 14 stuff? And he was like, yeah. I was like, oh my God, my life has changed a lot in the last 3 years. But, I was originally thinking about arranging Powell from Trials of Mana or Second Densetsu 3 for the album. I really love that tune, and I still want to arrange it. But as I was getting ready to work on stuff, I just had From the Dragon's Wake from Final Fantasy 14 stuck in my head. Mm-hmm. And I was out on a run, I started having these ideas of like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like this section was in 7? And wouldn't it be cool if somebody took a solo over this part? And I got back home from my run, and I just messaged everyone and said, do you guys mind if I change the plan completely?
And then we kicked him out of the band.
Yeah.
But honestly, from my perspective at least, like when somebody in the band is just so gung-ho and they're like, wait, no, my heart is somewhere else right now. It's like, no, you have to go with that because obviously you've got something, and we trust each other enough to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's sort of our like MO as a band, is that we want to do stuff that we feel passionately about and not just do the the tried and true popular themes. Not that that's bad or anything, but we just play a lot of indie games, and I feel like that stuff doesn't get covered as often. We really love doing those deep cuts and maybe exposing people to games that they haven't heard of, like Bloodborne Kart.
For sure. So we added a couple new arrangements. I had always wanted to do something from Link's Awakening, and the only thing I knew about it is that I have to include the B section somehow, and then I did. And, but then we also reworked 2 of our older arrangements, which both saw. Victory Storm wasn't premiered at MAGFest, but I Was Born for This was.
It was actually.
Oh, was it?
I think we played it in like 2015.
That's right. Okay.
Mag Classic.
Mag Classic in Alexandria.
I wasn't even in the band
Forgot
yet.
about that. That was before my time.
And part of the reason we reworked them, at least for me with the Journey piece, was just like the band had evolved. This record was going to be, just different than what we've done in the past. So I kind of rewrote it a little bit. I've grown as an arranger too, so I was like, I want to clean up some things that I wish I knew back then, like about how to do and everything. And Ben, I don't know if you want to talk about Victory Storm a tiny bit.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about it a little bit. I think like Victory Storm was a piece that we had been playing a lot during live shows and also streaming shows, I think. And so it was, I think we thought it was a good one to put on there because it sort of represents like the meat and potatoes of DiscoCactus. Like, and I was gonna say, it's like we do like to do a lot of stuff with indie games, but when we do hit pieces of video game music that are part of like the capital C like canon of video game music, which which I feel like I could talk like miles about at some point.
That's a different panel.
That's a different panel. Like when we tackle tunes that are really, really well known, that sort of gives us an opening to sort of be a little bit more creative because we're like, okay, we don't need to preserve this melody super well because everybody knows it. Everybody knows most everybody knows Song of Storms. Most everybody knows like the Final Fantasy's, victory theme and all that kind of stuff. So when we do the classics, we can sort of experiment with things and get a little weird and kind of go off the rails a little bit. I think, we do it with that track. We do it also, I think, with like the Sonic Mania stuff too, because that stuff was like quite popular. And so you were able to sort of go off the rails a little bit with that one too. So I think that's kind of the idea behind putting Victory Storm on there alongside all of these like really great indie tunes that we really love and cherish.
Sure.
Except for Fall Guys, we don't get really crazy with that one at all.
No, that's
That
a
one's
straight
pretty
ahead cover.
So we had our big repertoire planning meetings, listening to tunes, being like, oh shit, that sounds cool. And
Sorry, can I say one more thing?
Huh?
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
Unless you're about to say it, in which I apologize.
Go ahead.
But I think the other thing about like deciding between like indie tunes and like well-known tunes is that we had this like big like Google document of a bunch of different things we wanted to do. We put them all into different categories. They're sort of like things that are well-known, things that are less known, and then like really deep cuts. And we wanted to have sort of a good mixture of all three.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea that maybe knowing a track would lead you to an album, or knowing a game would lead you to this album, or the idea of listening to a track on the album that could lead you toward a game that you haven't heard of before.
Yeah, that was literally what I was gonna say. That's not true. I was gonna move on actually. So we had that big planning meeting. We reworked our Kickstarter entirely. They changed our plan. Decided on a handful of stretch goals, which we'll get to that later. What the tiers would be, what's our timeline. We originally were thinking like we can get this whole process down in like a couple months, which it was a couple months, but it was closer to a year than we thought.
Yeah. Sure.
We calculated how much everything was going to cost, which is hilarious.
Boy, were we wrong.
So then, like, we revisited our short list of musicians that we were like, we want these people on the album. We even added a few to that based on like, who we've worked with in the past. I will say we only cut 2 people from the album, and that was Cardi B and Josh Groban. We were like, they don't mesh with our sound that well.
They were kind of curt in their emails. They always like, we hope this email finds you well. Like, get out of here.
It does not find me well. Thank you.
Ben's having a heart attack.
Oh, maybe we do need to replace Ben with Josh Groban if he doesn't make it out of this. All right. Anyway, so Laura did a lot of the.
I just saw that line on this line.
Yeah. Laura did a lot of the heavy lifting on this side. Laura is terrific with making plans and like making a big structure and making sure all those pieces fall into place. And as you can see, she's really smart and we're not.
Because I'm wearing glasses. That's what makes it. I'll talk a little bit about like how I did this research because I never ran a Kickstarter before, like in any way, shape, or form. So what I did, in case you're thinking about doing this, I looked up a lot of Kickstarters of like a similar ilk, like other musicians that we know in video game audio. Like I looked up Mega Ran's Kickstarter, looked up Jillian Aversa's Kickstarter from years ago. See like what kind of stretch goals they make. How successful was it? How fast did they fund it? Like, was it like, people were crazy about this stuff, or did they have to like build up, research? I also looked at a lot of, this is weird, but board game Kickstarters, because they have a lot of physical, like, stretch goal things, and I wanted to see like how long does that take to do all that stuff? And I was still wrong, but it was helpful to look at all of that and kind of see like how much money they raised, where that money went to, because they're very helpful. They make the graph of like, typically Kickstarters will be like 20% goes to this thing and 40% goes to this thing, and then I tried to come up with a budget based on our research on like recording studios that we were thinking of working with and how much we would want to pay the musicians, because that was super crazy important to us. We didn't want to ask people to do this for free. We wanted this to be like, a legit thing that they got, something out of for all the hard work. And like, could we get all the musicians together? But we'd have to pay for travel and stuff like that. And I will say that despite my best efforts, whatever you do, add a few $1,000s on top of that. Because we had all sorts of stuff that we didn't foresee, like we had issues where we had to hire new people to fix stuff. We had issues with our album art, and we just ended up spending extra money on that and stuff. It will be something you cannot predict.
Yeah, you can't look at another Kickstarter and learn from that in 2021 the price of shipping materials will go up.
Yes. Like the postage changed. Like, boy, was that a rude awakening.
Copyright law changed, actually. Copyright law changed, and it changed the way we had to license our stuff.
Oh God, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And I also made a really big mistake with the copyright thing. So like when you're getting the copyrighted song, it's not based on like something. You have to just read that stuff very carefully. Because I did not get the. I thought it was like there was a 30% discount. I had a coupon. I was like, this is great. I'm gonna save so much money on this. We have to spend like $1,500 on licensing, and like. It's not on the royalty money, it's on the service cost. So I thought I was going to save like $800, and it was more like $20. So I had to tell the band, like, hey guys, we have less money than we thought. So anyway, the long and short of it is like, do as much research as you can, but just add a massive, massive buffer, because like you don't want to be scrambling for change at like, the last like, echelon of this process. But yeah, always planning ahead is helpful, but you can't plan for everything.
On the other end of it, I will just say, like, also be a little honest with yourself. Like, if you're making a video game music album, don't set your price at $100,000 because you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah, we set a very, very low goal. When we were concerned about making that, we were like, okay, we hope we get to, what was it, like 8,000?
Laura, we'll get there. So the next thing was, what are we going to call the album? Because we were like, we had so many like, we had so many ideas. We had so many ideas, but we weren't like, at first we were like, what do we call the DiscoCactus album? Do we just self-title it DiscoCactus? No, we came up with another Google form of, I think, 150 names.
Allow me to read some of them to you.
Yes.
Open source, blast processing, disco drive, nerd carnival, blowing into the cartridge doesn't actually work, personal vibes, Taco Bell's canon, sound test, Galaxy Brain, Alpha Build, just slaps and bops. You cheated not only the game but yourself. All items, 360 dope scope. I forgot about that one.
I did too.
Botanical cannibals, pocket healing. Have you seen my puppy? LOL, S rank, Vidgma games, dishing out defunk, giraffes, quadcore.
Can I say my two favorite that I remember from the list? One was, you shut the hell up when you're talking to me. And then I don't remember who came up with the fart of the deal and why they thought that was appropriate.
Yeah,
that does sound like something I would do.
Yeah, and just a ton of those. And then we had
Those were all like labeled no in our spreadsheet, just so you know.
and we had 3 that we really liked, and they were Deep Chaos, Mind Palace, and Mania Mode. And we decided with Mania Mode for a lot of reasons, but mostly because it sounds really cool.
Wait, didn't we have one called Big Head Mode too?
Oh yeah, Big
Yeah,
Head
probably.
Mode.
Oh, I didn't read the whole list. We don't have time for that.
Big Head Mode was up there.
Big Head Mode is going to be our second album when our egos inflate.
I can't wait for the album art.
So, like, most of this planning work was either done like remotely or on our big album planning retreat, where we were gonna go somewhere and like actually work on this album and rehearse together and everything. And it turned out to be a mess because we got caught in a hurricane, had to go to Doug's parents' house, and we basically didn't rehearse. We spent so much time coming up with names, and then Doug's basement flooded. It was
My dad bought a new sump pump, and he just left it there. He didn't put it in. He just left it in the box and left. And I didn't know how to put a sump pump in. It was horrible.
Welcome to the MAGFest roast of Doug's dad.
All right, so we finally get to the Kickstarter launch. We launch in late August, and we're going to run it for a month. We asked for $8,500, and like Laura said, we were nervous. We were like, we know we have fans and all, but we don't know what's going to happen here. Yeah. We raised it in 4 hours.
Yeah, we were talking about like, okay, so in the last week, maybe we can like do a show or something like that to try to like drum up interest, try to like squeeze that last little bit out. Yeah, 4 hours went by. I think I was like out on a run or something like that, and I looked at my phone. I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
I was asleep.
I was at a church gig and my phone starts blowing up while I'm playing like Amazing Grace, and I was.
And we were writing up new stretch goals, and like. We raised a bunch of money to the point where like we passed our first stretch goal before we could tell anybody what it was, and we were like, we're gonna do a music video too. So we raised about $24K, which was wonderful, and it turned out to be almost enough.
Yep. Well, we did add the stretch goal of producing vinyl records, which costs a lot of money.
Yeah, for sure. And in many ways, a lot more than you expect. Once again, because of changes in shipping costs, and like there's so many details about that we didn't really anticipate, such as like mastering them again a different way for vinyl, or how many records do you need for your album?
And album art for that, we had to redo it was a lot of stuff that we just like didn't really think.
Yeah.
And now we know, but
Yeah. So now we get to actually recording the album. So during and after the Kickstarter, we spent time like finishing the songs, rehearsing, workshopping. I don't think I finished You're Lost until like October, and we recorded in November. We shopped around to some recording studios in like the Connecticut, New York, New Jersey area, because we're all in those areas. And we booked Douglas Recording in Brooklyn. And we did a visit beforehand. I have a couple photos I'll show you guys later.
And it's down the street from my apartment.
yeah, we walked there.
Yay.
It was, and not only was it like easy and convenient, it was one of the best experiences I've ever had working with these people. We'll get more into it, but Douglas Recording, they really treated us right. So we came up with our recording plan. We had the five of us on here on stage. Mateus lives in Michigan, so he couldn't come out and fly. But so the five of us plus a drummer, which we had hired Dom Palambi from Dom Palambi on Twitch and Dom Palambi's Game Night and all that. We were all going to be there physically in studio, and then Mateus and then all of our auxiliary musicians were going to record remote after we wrapped up in the studio. We essentially gave them a month to record all of their parts. And just, I guess real quick, I just want to shout out all of them. So we have Kristen Nagus on oboe, Bassoonify on bassoon, who's right there. Yeah. What up? They played on our Hollow Knight arrangement, and then we had Alana Yee on French horn, Chris Williams, who was playing with us the other night on trumpet, and Carlos Eni on tenor sax, also played with us the other night. Who am I missing?
We had Anton Carrazza playing aerophone. We also had Danny Romberger join us for Stupidopolis and something else, Last Surprise.
Yeah.
Alex Hill on
Alex
tuba
Hill.
for the Deltarune.
Will Roger on flute.
Oh,
flute
Will
as
Roger
well.
played flute on a couple.
Yeah. I have to actually go soon because I'm playing with the game brass right after this, speaking of Alex Hill and Danny Romberger. I would like to jump in and
Sure.
talk a little bit about the actual process of recording at that studio. And to tell my own personal anecdote, which was that when it was, we all got in like the night before, something like that. We were going to crash at Ben's place to make sure that we were ready. And when we were walking to my car to go head on over to the studio, I discovered that there was a window that wasn't there anymore because someone threw a brick through it. And my vibraphone was in the car. My instrument was in the car. I didn't leave the bars in the car because that was the more valuable part, but the frame was in there, and I was just kind of like, I don't know. I was thinking like, well, I don't think this area is that bad. Plus, who's going to try to steal a vibraphone? I was right. They took they broke in and took my lunchbox. There was nothing in it. They did leave behind a really nice multi-tool. So I have that in the car now. In case.
And your vibraphone frame they left behind.
Yeah, my vibraphone frame was there. I mean, it was still annoying because I had to like call the police and like freak out for a little bit and discover that my insurance, my car insurance, didn't actually cover glass and all of that great stuff. But I don't know. We still did it. I like taped a couple garbage bags over the window.
I remember when you were going to try to file a police report online and it was broken.
Yep.
So you had to wait there with the car. And we're trying to figure out like, okay, let's take Sam's car down there and get his instrument. And then we got a text from you that said, I told the cops about DiscoCactus.
And like Laura was saying before, you're gonna run into snags in the throughout the entire process of making a project. Sometimes it's like, oh, we didn't account for this much money. Sometimes it's like we lost 3 hours in the studio because one of our bandmates was robbed and his car's broken.
Yep. And with that, speaking of being robbed, I have to go.
Robbing us of our time.
Yeah. All right. Bye, everybody. Go see Game Wrestling.
Go see Game Wrestling too.
It's my microphone now.
Yeah. Anyway, so wait 1 second. Okay, Doug's out of the band. So we spent 25 hours total in the studio, 5 hours on day one, which turned into 2 hours, but we spent a lot of the time setting up, and we recorded, I believe, Last Surprise that day. Then 10 hours on day two and 10 hours on day three.
1 weekend.
Yeah. Chris Gilroy, the engineer, and his two assistants that were there the whole weekend deserve a ton of credit for how the album sounds and it being like done at all, because they provided such valuable technical insight and also musical insight to make the album sound more like how we wanted it to. Like, we would be in the middle of recording a song and Chris would chime in and be like, I feel like he wouldn't do anything to change the song, but he would do things to change sound and stuff like that. One of my favorites, I have two stick out in my mind. One is we were playing Raid they're both my stories about Raid and Crosscode. We started playing and Chris goes, I feel like the snare isn't punchy enough. Dom, would you want to try our 3D printed snare? And he's like, I'll try it. And it was perfect. It sounded absolutely amazing. And the second one was when Pete was recording his guitar solo on that. And Chris goes, okay, Pete, I'm thinking double guitar solo, right? And you just like, yes. I am thinking that. And then he brought out, can you explain what he brought out? Because I still don't get it.
Well, there were two things. One, the first solo, he said, do you have something with more distortion? I was like, yeah, I can turn up this a little bit. He goes, no, that's not what I mean. No. He brought out another pedal made by Kurt Ballou, who is an engineer, and he plays in a very prolific metal band Converge, and he just puts it out in front of me and just like, okay, maybe plug into this. And it was like this incredibly loud, super distorted sound, and he was just like, yeah, okay, great, yeah, we have to use that. And then the second time he said, he pulled out this old timey like radio. It like apparently it's made with like the guts of like some Fender amp. But it just looked like this little radio, and he's like, oh, you're gonna plug into this, and we're gonna do another solo through this, and it's just this super crunchy, loud. Like if it wasn't a guitar solo, it would sound horrible, but it was just like, and he just was like, yeah, this is a fun thing we can use, and I would have never thought to do that. Also, I didn't know he had like an old radio to just put stuff through like that.
Yeah. And he was doing stuff like that for us the entire weekend.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
They also had the organ. That was a big pull when we were
I'll get to that because so here's our photo collection here. So this is us at Douglas Studio. This is when we were doing our tour. So our plan was there was like a floor, and on the floor we were gonna have me, Pete, Ben on piano, and Doug on vibraphone, all in the room, and then drums were going to be in an ISO booth, and Laura was going to be in an ISO booth because she was singing and playing flute and stuff. So here's us just kind of investigating the studio. You see it's like lined with it was lined with amps, but here you see it's lined with keyboards and stuff too.
Yeah, I think this weekend they were in the middle of another session, and they let us in during a break.
That's Chris at the piano. Our wonderful guy. So these are the house kit had Mr. Sparkle on it, which was like amazing. But so the photo on the left is the ISO booth that Dom played in. It also had a Hammond organ in there. And once I saw, because we did this visit in September, I think, when I saw that, I rewrote Your Loss to include the Hammond organ, because I was like, we have to have this on the album somewhere. And I like asked him that day, like, could we use this? And he's like, yeah, as long as I know you're using it in advance. I'm like, I'm telling you right now. So that's them setting up the drums in the ISO booth. And that's Dom in the center. And on the right is one of his assistants.
I believe Ethan was his name.
Thank you.
Caleb, Ethan or Caleb, yeah.
There's us trying out amplifiers beforehand. This was the mixing booth, the control room. There's us actually like this. I think this was right before we recorded Last Surprise. There's Laura in her ISO booth, having the time of her life. And this was us the day we wrapped, which we were eating pizza. We were so tired. We'd been recording for 25 hours, masked the entire time too, which like nobody talks about how hard that is too. I mean, it was fine. We did fine. But I'm not being a baby about it, I promise. So then we got to the mixing phase. Once we recorded, we gave our collaborators a month to record their parts. But in the meantime, we listened to all of our takes remotely that we did in studio and everything. And like, if there was any like little cleanup we had to do with like pitch adjustment or like lining up certain things to make sure they're exactly in time, or not, as much as sounded real anyway. We did all that. And it was amazing. We did it remotely, and Pete did a lot of this work because he's the audio engineer who knows how to do all of this stuff.
I also know the program that lets me stream my audio to you guys, so you can also hear.
Yeah, it was baffling. It was really cool. And so we had a big mixing document, or big mixing notes document that we'd like. Every single one was like 10 pages long. I think we had 3 or 4 rounds of notes for Chris, and we'd send them to him, and then he would look them over and change what we wanted and sometimes would be like, hey, I don't know what that means. It's like, oh, that's because we got into an argument about it and we never settled on anything.
Yeah, our process for this was we each picked a color, like in a Google Doc, and we would just type to each other in conversations with.
Oh, I remember this
And be
now.
like, I'd be typing in purple, like, Ben, is this like accurate? And you'd be like, I don't know. And Doug's like, no, it's not. And we'd have like full conversations.
It wouldn't
And Pete's
delete
like-
any of it. So it's
Pete's
just-
like, what am I supposed to tell Chris? We can't send him this.
And yeah, again, Chris was doing the brunt of the mixing work, and he gave us more insight. Like he would tell us like, we're like, I feel like I'm not hearing enough violin here. Like, can we turn up the volume on that? And he'd be like, I don't know if it's a volume issue. It might be a frequency issue, an EQ issue. And he would tweak it, and he would be exactly right 100% of the time. One of my favorite moments was we were mixing Rage Keeps You Alive, and we were hearing a wrong note in there somewhere. And we're like, who played a wrong note? And it wasn't a wrong note. It was that on the bass, you hear the overtone of like one of the low notes. And so it was like you hear like a high B like very faintly, and everyone else is singing a C, so it just clashes. And he was like, oh, I'll just turn down the treble on that or whatever, and it was like totally fixed. Wizardry, absolute wizardry. We got to do the last round of mixing notes in person. Like we got to be in the studio and we listened as he like corrected and fixed stuff.
Real quick, our drummer, Don Palami, just walked in.
Yeah,
All right, see you later.
get him out. Cut his mic. Dom, I was telling him the 3D printed snare story before from Crosscode.
Oh,
Yeah.
We had like 6 or 7 snare drums in the studio, and I think this is studio basically.
Chris
Chris
Gilroy.
Gilroy.
Yeah.
We use that on 1 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
It makes a world of difference. Trust me.
And he was right. He was right, folks. So then once we wrapped up that whole process, we sent off to our mastering engineer, Scott Moriarty, who I believe he's based in New Jersey, right?
Yes, he works out of a studio called Backroom Studios in Rockaway, New Jersey, and he is also awesome.
Did he go to school with you?
No, he's just a friend. We worked together for a little while. But
Okay.
he's a friend of mine, and he's very, very good at what he does as well.
Yeah. He mastered both the original and the vinyl as well.
Yeah.
So time to put the thing out, right? Once production was wrapped, it was time to get it out there. We contracted Saffron Aurora to do our album art, and you can find her on Twitter and stuff. She was the art director for the video game The Big Con that came out this past year. She did a terrific job with that. We finally settled on a release date, which was May 16th, which was about a month after we had finished everything. We just had to like get all of the, Bandcamp storefront stuff in order. We worked with Sound Drop, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. All right, I didn't want to plug Sound Drop if we didn't use them, but we did. So, and we had a weekend where it was the weekend of the release where we got together the night before. We signed all of the physical CDs, just like went around in a circle and signed them all. Prepared our merch packages for our backers because some of our tiers were like you get stickers and stuff like that. And then we had a listening party the day of live on Twitch. We infamously told everybody about it like 2 days before the album came out. We kind of blew it.
Including Dom. He was like, I have a stream that day, guys.
Yeah.
We're like, oh, we'll see you after.
Yep. So now we get to the point where it's the rest of our stretch goals. The album's out. Everyone's listening to it. Everyone says, good job, DiscoCactus, and we say thank you. However, we still have more stuff to do. Like we're technically not done. So we finished making our digital scores and like engraving them and everything, and we're working on getting like physicals to our backers and everything. Ben bore most of the weight of that work because he's a composer and he does that work professionally. We had another residency at Avaloq Farm Institute just this past summer in June, where we started writing and workshopping our custom arrangements. So we have 4 custom arrangements that we are currently writing now. We're going to record in the next couple months. What else? Oh, it's right there. So we had Yusuf Rashid, who is here at MAGFest. You'll see him around. He was with us that week on drums and helped us with the whole process of writing these 4 new tunes.
He's also playing with Game Brass today at 2 p.m.
Oh yeah. And then we made our music video that we promised everybody. This past summer, we filmed it in August. We in the middle of the woods in Connecticut. The music video "You're Lost" of my arrangement, starring Carlos Ini, and shot, produced, edited by Ro Panaganti, who's right here. And as if some of you caught before, Ro was saying he got stung by a bee during production, and poison ivy.
We all got poison ivy.
He got stung by poison ivy, and he really took a bullet for us, and we appreciate it. And just a little secret for everyone in this room. I know it's being recorded, but a little secret for everybody in this room. Our vinyl production is almost done. So those are coming for anybody who needed one of those. They're on the way. We think they're on the way. So that's it for the panel for now. For now, what am I talking about? I'm being a nervous wreck. That's all we have. I'd like to open up the floor to any questions that anybody might have, because we have a couple minutes. Yeah, a couple minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So question, I know probably at least half of you have credits on actual games already. Do you think that DiscoCactus will ever move beyond just being star band if you were contacted by some of these industries?
Sure. Just to repeat the question, you were asking if DiscoCactus is going to move on and do more video game projects in the future and
Original music
as well. The answer is we would love to. we would love to do that.
We have a little bit of experience. Yeah, because like all 4 of us have done some amount of like work as like all 5 of us have done a lot of work like either as a performer on video game soundtracks. You composed some music for video games too.
Yeah, a couple indie games.
Yeah, and actually way back in 2020, our good friend Will Roger put me in touch with a friend of his named Rusty McClellan, who is making a game called Letterbound, which I think is unfortunately on hiatus at the moment.
It is.
But the deal was that I would write some of the music and it would be recorded by DiscoCactus. So if you go to Steam, actually, you can download the Letterbound demo there, and it features our logo like in the loading credits too. So we are technically
We've already done it.
Yeah.
We would love to do more.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
We've talked about maybe someday doing an album of just original music, like just for
because
fun.
also like all of us have also composed original music at some point. Those 2 are legitimate card-carrying composers, and Pete and I write a song every once in a while. So we're into the idea.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, Pete, you've worked on a soundtrack for a game too, right?
That's
Or
right.
are
I
working on
did
one?
write a soundtrack for a game. Oh my gosh, that was like 9 years ago at this point. But yeah, we've all have some experience with doing stuff like that. It's just doing it as an entire band is it is a logistical issue where it's just like you have to have something really specific if you want a band to do your game or whatever. And if you do, hit us up.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Sign with the cover. Can you ever does it have to be something that you play a bunch, or can you just like hear a song that you've never heard from a team, you've never played, and be like, oh, I think we can do a good job today?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I've heard soundtracks.
To repeat the question, if we ever just like heard a song, when we hear a song and we're just like, oh, a cover just snaps into our head, or is it the opposite? Does it take a while? And Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like every now and then there's one that just like hits us and we're like, oh,
Yeah.
I love this. Like
Yeah.
that was the Gods Will Be Watching song, Rage Keeps You Alive for me. Like that was just like, this is so cool. And I just could have pictured this like massive, arrangement coming out of it. But for Bloodborne Card as well, we heard it and we were just like, we have to play this. This is so perfect for us. But actually, for Bloodborne Card, it took me a while to figure out the rest of the arrangement because I wanted to add some other themes from the game to it. And so that took me quite a bit of time to figure out how I wanted to make it into a cohesive arrangement. Because a lot of times we don't just use one theme from a game, we incorporate many, and we try to make it, in some cases, almost like a narrative experience. So that process takes a while, but we definitely, at least for me, I've had like lightning strike where it's like, I got to do this.
Yeah.
I'll say it's different for all of us in some ways. Like we'll hear a song, we'll go, oh my God, yes, that. But like for me, like the opposite happened in making the album when I was doing the Link's Awakening tune, where it's like I had a couple ideas and I didn't know what to do with them, so I had to sit with it for like a good month of just like trying something, playing something on a keyboard and going, that sounds terrible, and then just like doing it over and over again until like something fell into place, and then I was like, oh wait a minute, what if I sneak in this little quote here, and then like build off that, and then that's how that happened, of just a lot of trial and error. So I think it's rare that we hear something and we just like Mozart it into existence. But there have been plenty of times when we've been like, like the brainstorming session happens within 5 minutes, and we're like, we've got something,
Yeah.
Yeah. If I can also speak to this a little bit, in my own personal experience in arranging stuff for the group and arranging stuff in general, I tend to have this sort of weird reaction where, like, sometimes lightning strikes. Like, I think for Fall Guys, that was another sort of like lightning strikes moment. It's just like, oh, we have to do this. This will be great. And then for a lot of other tunes, it's like, oh, I've been listening to this song for 10 years or so. I would love to do this. And you get these sort of longer form things. I think for me, I have this like weird relationship with it where I find I have an easier time arranging music that is not like close to my heart or is not important to me in a weird way. And I think it's because like for instance, I guess I don't want to give it away, so I won't really give it away. But like one of the Kickstarter arrangements that we're doing was requested from a game that is very close and dear to my heart. And so I jumped at the opportunity to do it, but I was struggling with it for a very long time. And I had to like deviate from track to track to track to track on that album because I was just like, I like when something is really close to my heart, I don't want to change it, And I think my whole MO as an arranger is that like I really like, this is a bad analogy, but it's like I really like twisting the knife in an arrangement and changing things and sort of exerting my own little influence over it because like I'm a composer and I like to be weird and do crazy stuff. So when a tune is really near and dear and close to my heart, I have a hard time arranging it because I don't want to change anything. Because like this track is great as it is. I don't want to do anything to it. So that's why I have an easier time with like I'm trying to think of a good example. It's just like, oh, we're going to do a bunch of stuff from this game. I'm like, can I do the menu music? Because I like taking these small like niche tracks and going with it because I like sometimes I gravitate towards something that's just like, this isn't a particularly memorable track, but it has some really cool little mechanical things in it that I could use as a composer to sort of spin out something different. That's me being selfish for a little second. This is like a little my MO about like how do we tackle things. But yeah, I think it's like it is sort of a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, I think, when it comes to arranging stuff.
In short, DiscoCactus is a land of contrast.
I think we have 2 more minutes left. 1-0. Really? You got any more questions? Sure.
So, are there any, I preface this with, I know Doug has a incredibly eclectic mix of instruments in the basement. And I know, Laura, you play organ sometimes and release them. And I think it was Tim said you found the organ in the studio and you're like, okay, well, we have to have this.
Yeah.
Are there any other instruments that like you really wish logistically that you could work out to get in an album, or are there any other like instances where you also said like, okay, we've got to do this instrument now, right?
Yeah.
Second to work, but we got to do this now.
Just to repeat the question real quick, is there like an instrument that we really wanted to work into any of our arrangements or something? So I do play guitar in the band. I also play piano, and I used to play quite a bit of clarinet, and I really miss the bass clarinet. It's so much fun to play, and I don't have one. I don't have the money for one, but I would love to have bass clarinet somewhere on our, and even just hire somebody else to play
Hey, the
it,
more albums you buy, the closer we get to that bass clarinet.
Yeah, I would love to include bass clarinet somewhere. Lightning hasn't struck there yet. I don't know where we would even put it, but like, we'll find something.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say we all have we all also have a classical music background too, because like most of us all came from music conservatory to some extent. So like I always beg Pete, like, Pete, I want you to play clarinet, please. Because like I think another thing.
Practice.
Yeah, right. Because I think one thing that we want to do is like sort of explore sort of like not like a quieter side, but sort of like a more intimate side with music a little bit, and doing sort of acoustic things. Like we all, I think I'm correct in saying this, and like we would like to sort of do more like chamber music-y things sometimes, because that's kind of how we operate as a band too. But actually, going back to your question, I would also like to work with an Arhu player at some point.
That'd be cool.
That would be really fun.
I have dreamed about doing the Wildwoods track from Mario Kart 8 with the penny whistle. I think that would sound really cool. I'd love to hear somebody do like jazz penny whistle on our album, and it won't be me, so we need to find somebody that can do that.
You know, I was going to make a joke about Jazz Penny Whistle, but then I remembered Jaco Pastorius's self-titled album where he has a tune that's bass, drums, piano, and piccolo as the main instrument. It rips. So it's like, all right, let's try it.
Yeah.
I think one of our in general what we've been trying to achieve is like kind of bigger and bigger groups. Like, you know, this past weekend we had a choir. We had 12 people on stage, and
That was a big dream of mine.
and we would love to do one of these days we're gonna get an orchestra together, and we're gonna do something there. One of these days. It might be when I'm 75 years old, but it's gonna happen. And it'd be great to work with a big band too.
Next year when you're 75 years old.
Just a final note on that. Having the choir was a big dream of mine, especially for so we needed it for Fall Guys because we knew we were going to do the Space Jam thing. And then I was like, oh, this is perfect. We can do Rage Keeps You Alive with like, because all the guys sang on the album for Rage Keeps You Alive. Any of the male singing you're hearing is just these guys like blending beautifully together. And it's like, oh, this is cool. We can open that up. And maybe we can add them into Bloodborne Kart. That was like a total last minute addition. But that was something I really always wanted to do.
I forgot about that. So during the album process, we actually had to overdub a couple things, and the weekend after we recorded the album, we got together at my house and set up the microphones and did an all boys choral session. I was going to say, sorry, boys only, but Laura was conducting us because she actually knows what she's doing. We got anything else? Dom, let's hear it.
So I did not expect Space Jam stuff. Because all I remember was doing the first video. So how long have you had that?
The tank.
How long have we had the Space Jam Fall Guys mashup in the tank is the question.
A month? It was very last minute, yeah.
Well, wasn't it it was the original idea at first?
So originally when I was arranging that back in 2020, I think, I remember like there's a bit in the middle, like at the end of like what I call the deep chaos, like the part where the music gets like really atonal and like wild. And I had a vocal line in my Sibelius file, and I had written in like a rhythmic, shouting. It's just like, hey, you, what you gonna do? Hey, you, what you gonna do? Because it had just like come into my head. I didn't even realize it was Space Jam. I was like, that's a thing I've heard online before, right? And then like, we were polishing it and finalizing it, and I took it out or whatever. And then I opened up the file again this year because we decided we were going to do it for this MAGFest show. And I looked at that and I was like, no, yes, let's do it. And then I got the juices rolling because I was like, I like this arrangement a lot. It's a lot of fun, but I want to do because like 3 years ago in 2020, I had done the sort of like what we call the Just Mario arrangement, which was like the hyper meme compilation thing that ends in Doki Doki Literature Club and has all like the weird meme
You at
stuff
your
in it.
most unhinged.
Yeah, and I wanted to do something similar to that, but I'm also like busy because like I have a day job now and I'm like got a bunch of stuff going on, and so I was like, what can I do to sort of like again like twist the knife, so to speak? And so I was just like, what if we have a choir sing and like this like very very like choir children type of thing. Yeah. So that's basically where that came from. But then the funny thing was that separately, Pete, you and Sam told me that your brother Max was playing Fall Guys the other day, and then out of nowhere started also singing "Hey You, What You Gonna Do?" the Space Jam thing.
This was like 2 weeks ago. I had to bite my tongue. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. So I guess it's a match made in heaven. I guess those two things, they just go together.
And the choir really they ran with it.
They did, yeah.
In particular, John Robert Matz, who's just like an absolute hero of video game music. He's adding in all of this stuff. We get to the section in the middle where it goes super like church choir, and he's like, "We've got a real jam."
Amazing.
We couldn't keep our faces straight.
I think that's also like, I don't know, that's the thing that I love to do the most. Actually, no, that's the thing that we love to do the most as the band is like take something that is so dumb and so stupid and treat it with the like poise and seriousness that you would treat like a Brahms symphony, or like a piece of like classical music. It's the funniest thing.
Yeah. All right. I think we got time for a couple more. If anybody's got any more questions. One more question.
One more
question. We
question.
talk a lot up here, so we got time for one more.
One more. Make it a good one.
So you guys talked earlier about how you were into unexpectedly stuff that was great on the album. I'm just wondering if you go into that a little bit. Like, were the rights having the license?
So the question is going into the licensing process a little bit more. Were people happy to help us out? Were people abrasive to the idea? Laura, go ahead.
So when you're licensing something, you actually don't have to speak directly to the license holders. In most cases, right? If it's released in the U.S., then you just go to like a website like Easy Song Licensing, and you say like, I'm doing this song from this soundtrack that was released, and then they do all of that legwork for you. You have to pay a certain amount of money for like the number of tracks you want to license. So we had to say like, we are projecting we're going to sell 300 albums. We need to license this tune 300 times. So if you have more than one tune in a track, you got to do each one. It racks up expenses like very, very quickly. But for one, Gods Will Be Watching, the soundtrack was not released in the US. And we didn't know that until we got the bounce back from Easy Song Licensing that said, it's going to be an extra $100 for us to try to figure out this one. And I was like, okay, hold on a second. And I emailed Fingerspit, the composer, because I had chatted with her a little bit online, and I was like, we have this issue. I was wondering if I could just ask you directly for permission. We can pay you the amount it would have been, through Easy Song Licensing and everything. And she wrote back saying, I feel like you guys should just go out for beers or something with that money. And she's like, I just don't worry about it. She just let us do it. And she was more than happy to do it. And that like, I was like crying when I got that email back because it was just so sweet. She was like, what would I do with that money? That's so much better spent for you guys. Like, nicest response. I really respect her a lot for that. So she was, yes. And also for Bloodborne card, I'm going to tell this story right now. So we were like, we have to do this. And we all followed Noble Demon on Twitter at the same time. But we were just so excited about it. And I looked up Noble Demon's email, and I was like, I have a really weird request. We really want to play this track, but I don't think I can transcribe it. And also, I want to make sure that this is okay, because I don't know how this licensing would work, because it's already an arrangement. And I think you wrote back in 2 minutes. You're like, absolutely, here's the MIDI file. You just gave me everything I needed. So like that was fantastic. And for the video during our concert, I emailed again, and Lilith, the dev, sent us all of that Bloodborne card footage and just like handed it all off to us so we can make that really cool video for the actual set. So like unbelievably nice people. Thank you.
All right, I think that's where we have to wrap up. If you haven't already, we're on social media. Come find us. Come listen to our music. And the last point I want to make is I made the slideshow. So everybody say, good job, Sam.
Good job, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
And if you see us around in the hall, come say hi to us, please.
Thanks, everyone.